In the course of a given week, I turn out a few of these videos. I normally do a short word for the week video, which is what this is, and I also do a sort of a deep dive, which goes out on a Sunday into a passage of scripture, work through a book and stuff. And I'm really struck by the way that you can go back across centuries, millennia, to one of these old Bible books, and you can find in there stuff that's absolutely bang on, spot on the money with the stuff we're looking at and dealing with in our culture, in our world today, right now. You could almost be forgiven for thinking that human nature hasn't changed very much, and neither has God over a long period of time. Now you can see from the sky behind me that the weather is changeable between shots, it's very changeable at the moment is our weather. But human nature shows its nature in different cultures, in slightly different cultural ways, but in essence there's so much that's the same across human history, and it seems almost prehistory as well. So, for example, in the book of Malachi, the Old Testament prophet, we've just started looking at him in our deep dive on a Sunday into Scripture, in the run-up to Christmas, because it's got a mention of prophecies of John the Baptist coming and things of that nature, quite closely picked up in Luke's Gospel when it comes to Jesus. We started our deep dive in the book of Malachi, but instead of just going in and picking out the little nuggety bits we want to talk about, we're looking at the whole picture. What sort of time was it given? When? How? What was it? By whom? And what's it saying in its original time? And lo and behold, what we find is that Malachi addresses a time that is in some ways very similar to ours in terms of its religious skepticism, I suppose you'd want to say. The people were asking questions like, there's all this stuff going wrong in the world, there's no justice, the people who are bad get away with it. Now, how can, why is God allowing that? And when God tells them of his love for them, they turn straight back at him and say, how have you loved us? In spite of the fact of their history, their recent history as people, and the way that he's rescued them from such terrible situations and calamities. And they're saying things like, all these bad people, wicked ways, they're getting away with everything, they're profiting, they're prospering, but we are not. Now, I don't want to give away any spoilers from the deep dive that I'm doing for Sundays into the book of Malachi. But I got to say this, there comes a point in the book where God says, look, this disillusionment can make you quite unfaithful in your attitude to God, in your behaviour, which follows from you thinking that you've got something against him and he should have done something for you, all the while you disregard and ignore your attitude, response and behaviour towards him. If you, through all of this, I'll be sure, he says, there's going to come a time, right, when I do sort out all these things, that's going to be a bad day for all the people who've not been faithful. But for those who have been faithful, the faithful remnant amongst the people who are living with all this cynicism and criticism of God in their hearts as if they were in the right, those who've lived faithfully through those times, for them, in that day of the Lord, when he comes to sort out the things you're all complaining about, for those faithful ones, in that day, the Son of Righteousness will arise with healing in his wings. So, in this context of blaming God for things then, God is saying two things. Firstly, don't you think I haven't noticed, and don't you think that I'm not going to do something about all these things you're complaining of as if I wasn't doing anything. Just you bear in mind, nobody's going to get away with anything in the end. But secondly, he says, for those who've persevered through the times of frustration and waiting and not getting your way in your own time, for those who've persevered faithfully, then the day of the Lord will not be a day of fear and trembling, as it were, but a day of joy when you will go out like calves, he says, with full bellies, well-fed calves, and frolic in God's field. Book of Malachi. Well worth a look in our day, in our time. And if you've got a stomach for the deep dive, perhaps you'd like to look out for the Do-It-Yourself Sunday Service Kit, which gets put out the same way this gets put out, and see if any of it over the next few weeks running up to Christmas makes any sense to you. Frolicking like a well-fed calf on the day of the Lord. Well, that's my word for the week. The Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings, not for those who fell into disappointment, disillusionment through their impatience with God, but who remain the faithful remnant until his great day, when the Son of Righteousness arises with healing for them in his wings. God bless you. Have a great week.